So these are already on?
Check one.
Yeah. Okay. So they don't even have to turn them on.
Oh, you can turn them off. Yeah.
Since we're working with that camera,
Maybe put the fifth one here and keep the sixth one. Five.
now does this mean that the Chris
So why don't you just actually take one of these?
And you wanted to.
Where would you want to stay?
Will there be people in the crowd? Like, are you going to go in the crowd and have people talk?
We are hoping that enough people come in the crowd, yes.
Oh, okay, all right. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll just use this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just... And then I'm going to toss it to He'll say something, he'll introduce everybody else, introduce themselves. Then I believe the representative from WMATA has a presentation. And then I'll toss it to him. You guys run the presentation. Once the presentation is done, then I will invite the first speaker out of the 20.
Yeah. Are you going to call them one by one or just have them call like a couple of them? So we probably don't need that.
So where would you like to open up from?
I may be also able to get your wireless, but then the batteries won't have it.
Hello? Hello, everybody. We are going to get started very shortly. If everyone can please take their seats. All right, good evening, and thank you everybody for coming out to tonight's town hall. My name is Crystal Park, and tonight we are going to be discussing WMATA's proposed operating budget for fiscal year 2021. Now, in that proposed budget, there are 4 Metro bus routes here in Montgomery County that would be cut, and all our council members here who are here right now, who also happen to be on the Transportation and Environment Committee, oppose those cuts. So let me turn it over to the chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee, Tom Hucker, to introduce himself, and then we'll go down the line, please.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Crystal, for organizing all this. Thank you all for it. Better? I'm not used to this hearing room. Thank you all for attending this special meeting of the Council's Transportation and Environment Committee. My name's Tom Hucker, who's the chair. I'm the chair of the committee. I also want to thank especially Maryland's Metro board member Mike Goldman and Charlie Scott for attending the meeting and hearing from the public. They've always expressed a real interest in hearing from the public, and that's what tonight is all about. We are here tonight for our 2nd annual Metro Town Hall to hear from Montgomery County residents about WMATA's FY21 operating budget. And I have some good news to deliver. Last year, as you may remember, we came together down the road at the Silver Spring Civic Building, and many of you participated in a petition drive we did urging the board to end the Silver Spring turnback that had been around for decades and double the service at Forest Glen, Glenmont, and Wheaton. Our Maryland members, after that town hall meeting, including Mike, fought for us, and we were successful in ending the turnbacks after 29 years. And we've seen that policy decision. You remember in that the famous movie quote that if you build it, they will come. We believed if you restore high quality service to Metro riders, they will come. And we found out that that policy decision paid off daily with incredible ridership numbers. Already there's 1,300 more riders daily using Glenmont and Wheaton and the Forest Glen stations in the last 6 months of 2019 than in the same time frame in 2018 when the turnback was still in effect. Ridership at the Silver Spring station also increased during this time, making it a net gain of 2,600 daily riders at the 4 Eastern Red Line stations in Montgomery County post the turnback. We now know how hard WMATA General Manager Paul Wiedefeld and our staff and board members have worked alongside county and state leaders to get Metro back on track and back to good, as they say. We know funding is tight, but we are hoping for our strong collaboration again this year. Tonight, we're going to limit the discussion to those items directly related to WMATA's operating budget. There are many topics we may hear about, but a preview of those include potential cuts to the Montgomery County Metro bus routes and a curtailing of service spans on others, potential fare increases that will negatively affect both bus and rail riders. Ultimately, we all know that Metro is the transportation backbone of our region, and it's crucial to our economic prosperity and our quality of life. So tonight, we're also going to hear a presentation from Metro's Charlie Scott about General Manager Wiedefeld's proposed budget. We'll then hear from some panelists representing civic and advocacy groups, followed by other citizens that have signed up. If you want to testify and you have not signed up, please see my Chief of Staff, who's in the back of the room raising his hand, Dave Kuhns, to sign up because we can add you to the list. We'll have to end the town hall at 8:30 tonight, so if we don't get to you, we're eager to receive your comments in writing, and we're going to pass those on to the Metro Board as well. And the good news is, because of a change in schedule that Mike will probably address, all your testimony tonight will be in the official transcript that the Metro Board will consider when they're making their budget decisions. And I'll just say personally, I called this hearing because I'm personally very concerned about the impact of the proposed budget cuts on Montgomery County in general and in my district in particular. The Montgomery County Council has set ambitious goals to reduce our carbon pollution, to reduce our traffic congestion, to drive our economic development, and to address racial inequities. And these proposed cuts directly undercut our ability to reach each of those 4 goals. So before turning things over to Charlie Scott for our presentation, I want to welcome comments from my committee colleague, Evan Glass, and then I'll turn it over to Board Member Goldman. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Chair Hucker. Thank you all for coming out tonight for what is a really important conversation. 65,000 residents in Montgomery County rely on the Metro bus every single day. And a startling fact is, of those 65,000 residents who rely on the Metro bus, 50% make less than $30,000 a year, and 50% do not own a car. And so we are at risk of literally stranding some of our own residents if we cut or eliminate some of these bus routes. And some of the routes that are slated for being for cuts are the C4, the D5, the J2, the K6, the L8, the T2, and the Y2. It's not bingo, this is real life. And so there are other routes that are slated for partial elimination, but it's because of the dire consequences facing so many of our residents that a few weeks ago I authored a letter that was signed by all my colleagues on the county council, as well as an overwhelming majority of our state senators and state delegates here in Maryland. So I want you to know that we are all aware and trying to do what we can to make sure that we have transit equity here in Montgomery County. I'll also say that in this current budget, in the FY20 budget here in Montgomery County last year, I led the effort to expand the Kids Ride Free program so that kids under the age of 18 can take the Metro bus or the ride-on anytime those systems operate. Any day, any night. And what that did was have the students who decided they wanted to actually take our public bus system resulted in a 57% increase in our ride-on and a 51% increase in Metro bus use by kids under the age of 18. So doubling down on that point, if we provide access and availability, people will take our bus routes. And then last point, 41% of greenhouse emissions here in Montgomery County comes from transportation. And if we are serious about creating a better environment for our kids and our grandkids, we need to do all we can to limit and reduce single occupancy vehicles, and that means more public transportation. So at this point in time, to be reducing our bus routes doesn't make sense. And so I want to again thank the chairman for organizing this meeting, let you all know that we hear you, and tonight we are here to hear from you as well as WMATA and other stakeholders, because these cuts are problematic, and we're doing all we can to make sure we have transit equity here in Montgomery County. So thank you, Chairman Hucker.
Thank you so much, Council Member. And now, just to make sure everybody understands the proposed budget cuts that are before us, before the Metro Board, and the case for them and why the General Manager feels they're necessary, we're so pleased to have Charlie Scott with us. So thanks so much for, are you going?
Mr. Chair,
oh, I beg your pardon. Point of order. Oh, please introduce him. Yes.
Good evening. As Chairman Hucker introduced me, I'm Mike Goldman. I'm board member from Maryland. The WMATA board consists of a total of 8 members, 2 from Maryland, 2 from Virginia, 2 from the district, and 2 from the federal government. My other colleague representing Maryland is your Secretary of Transportation, Greg Slater, who couldn't be with us tonight. This is the second hearing on our fiscal year 2021 budget that we're holding in Maryland. The first one was held last Thursday as the official hearing in New Carrollton. At Chairman Hucker's request, his town hall meeting tonight will be a second semi-official hearing for Maryland and for people in Montgomery County to match the one that was held last week in New Carrollton in Prince George's County. And therefore, I will treat it as I treated the hearing last week, as a semi-official type hearing, and I will read to you exactly what I read last week as the official ground rules, and then I will introduce the WMATA staff person, Charlie, will give you a presentation, the same presentation that was given last Thursday in New Carrollton as part of the official hearing. So I want to take a moment to recognize that this is where we listen to you. This is your opportunity to comment on the proposals, and we're here to listen. We will not be able to answer questions during your testimony. If you have questions, you may see Charlie, who is the only WMATA Metro person here today, at the conclusion of his presentation. But before you begin your remarks, please state your name and the organization you represent, if any. Please note that all statements, including any personal information such as names, email addresses, or telephone numbers you provide in statements, are releasable to the public upon request, and we may post them on WMATA's website without change, including any personal information provided. Further testimony may be submitted and must be received by 9 a.m. on Monday, March 9th. That's the new closing date for testimony on this FY 2021 budget. Chairman Hucker recognized Dave Coons, his chief of staff, so you have written testimony. Give a copy to him so that it can be included in the submission that Chairman Hucker will be making to the Metro official docket at the conclusion of today's testimony. If you want to submit your own testimony, you may do that and mail it to Office of the Secretary, WMATA, 600 Fifth Street, Washington, D.C., 20001. Or you can submit it online at wmata.com/budget, also until 9 a.m. Monday, March 9th. Online, you also have the option to complete a survey, write a free-form comment, and upload a letter, petition, or other document. This is in addition to all the other options provided. If you have any questions about the different ways to provide testimony, please also see Charlie when he completes his presentation. Your comments, once submitted, will become part of the public record that will be reviewed by the Metro Board of Directors. Changes to the options presented here tonight may be proposed in response to testimony we hear from you tonight and to subsequent staff analysis. So I thank you very much. And with that introduction, I will ask Charlie to present the same presentation that was presented at the official hearing last Thursday in New Carrollton. Charlie.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Thank you, Chairman Hucker, for this opportunity. And so this presentation is actually about both the capital and the operating budget. I will spend more of the time focused on the operating budget because I understand that is more the focus of why the community has come out this evening for this town hall meeting. To highlight some of our achievements, as Councilmember Hucker mentioned, last year we did increase service on the red line in addition to increased service on the yellow and green lines. So that was one of our achievements in 2019. And also we've recognized our highest customer service in terms of customer feedback, and customers are now receiving on-time performance 90% of the time on the rail system. And of course that is tied together with our capital budget because the capital investments we're making is what is driving the improved service that customers are receiving. So in total, our budget, when you combine the capital and the operating, the proposed budget for FY21 is a $3.9 billion budget. That's about $1.9 billion on the capital side and $2 billion on the operation side. So basically, everything combined is what we're looking at when the board considers this budget in the coming month. So first, I'm going to talk about the proposed capital improvement program. We operate with a 6-year capital improvement program, but the focus, of course, for this coming year is just the FY21 program. In FY21, we're proposing to invest about $1.9 billion into the ongoing capital investments, primarily focused on a state of good repair. We're going to continue focusing on rehabbing, replacing, and modernizing rail cars, buses, and paratransit vehicles, as well as track and structures and other passenger facilities. Importantly, the state of Maryland joined with Virginia and the district to provide dedicated funding. So this is our first year that we're currently in where we're recognizing the benefits of that $500 million investment from the region. to focus on state of good repair for the system. And the table on the right hand kind of shows where those investments are coming from. So the state of Maryland, that $305 million for FY21 includes their $167 million investment from the dedicated funding legislation. And we're very appreciative of that effort. A couple things that we do with our capital program is focused in three major areas. And some of them are areas that customers see more on a day-to-day basis, and some of them are things that we do to make the trains run, make the buses run, that people don't necessarily see on a day-to-day basis. So in terms of the things that you touch and feel and recognize, these are things like the passenger facilities, bus stops at our rail stations. You know, many of you have commented to me that some of those are in dire need of upgrades because many of our rail stations here in the county have the original bus shelters at the rail stations, other passenger information displays, and other customer amenities within the system. On Metrobus, we're also doing more electronic customer information display signs with real-time bus information as well. Stepping up another level, the vehicles, obviously customers, touch and feel these every day. This past week, I believe, we just received the final order on our 7,000 series rail cars. So 748th of those orders came in, and now we're actually beginning our procurement on the 8,000 series rail cars, which will be the next series of rail cars in our system. On the bus side, our fleet, every year we replace about 100 buses, just to keep up the fleet. So every buses on average have a 7.5-year average. And we're also, within that program, we're beginning to test out and pilot electric buses. So we're optimistic to see what that will yield. We're not going to go all in on electric buses, but we do want to pilot electric technology to see what promise that holds for the future of our bus fleet. And then again, every year, our Metro Access fleet is about 675 vehicles, and every year we have to replace about 1/4 of those vehicles. Turning to the parts of the system that most riders don't really get to see on a day-to-day basis, but this actually comprises the bulk of our capital program. This is the infrastructure systems and support facilities. So this is everything from the track that the trains run on, to the automatic train control systems, the power that runs the trains, back office systems. We're also consolidating our office space across the region into 3 new headquarters buildings, one each in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And then also bus garage. We have many old facilities that we actually inherited when we bought up bus companies back in the 70s. And they date back many, many years, almost some over 100 years old. So in the coming years, we're going to focus on Northern and Bladensburg bus garages. So now I think I'll turn to the part of the budget that most people here have come to hear about. This is in terms of the operating budget. So some of the focus for this coming year is really trying to focus the resources that we have. And of course, all government entities have limited resources to provide everything to the public. And trying to focus those resources where we have found that there's most demand and most ability to serve the customers. So we are looking at additional Metro rail service. Notably, the late night service is proposed to go from 11:30 instead of closing at 11:30 on Monday to Thursday, closing at midnight, and then also closing at 2 a.m. instead of 1 a.m. Friday night and Saturday night. I know that's been a big issue for more urban areas like Silver Spring right here. So we hope that is something that we can provide to the customers. The focus has been on having the window of time overnight to do the necessary maintenance on the system. And based on efficiencies that we've realized, we're confident that we can continue those investments overnight and still provide those 4 extra hours a week. Also looking at enhancing some Metro extra service on the bus side. These are the limited stop buses, and we find that that's where customers seem to have the most interest in riding more, as well as the bus that doesn't stop as frequently and gets you to your destination faster. Enhancing fare options. We're looking actually for the bus customers of reducing the weekly bus pass from $15 to $12. So really trying to encourage as many people to stay on passes as possible, because we think that's a economic tool for our riders to use. And also related to that, the unlimited monthly pass, also the general manager's proposal there is to actually keep that rate at the same rate that it is in the current fiscal year. So we hope even if the fares go up, that customers will still have the ability to pay the same rate that they currently are on that for those passes as well. So looking at the budget, one important thing to note is that in both Maryland and Virginia, when we receive the dedicated funding, one of the requirements is that we maintain the subsidy growth for Maryland and for Virginia at no more than 3% annually. So that's one of the challenges that we have to face at Metro when we propose these budgets. So this takes a look at the baseline budget. There are other things such as Metro Access and Silverline that are outside of this math right here. But that's one of the things that we need to focus on, making sure that the base budget is growing no more than 3% in terms of what the jurisdictions pay in their subsidy for Metro. In terms of where the funding comes from, obviously the largest source of funding is the subsidy from the state of Maryland and DC and the Virginia jurisdictions. That accounts for almost 60% of our operating budget. Passenger fares account for another 33%, and then parking we count separately, but that's another significant part of what our customers fund to keep our system running. And in terms of where we use the funds, about 60% goes to Metro Rail, a third to Metro Bus, and about almost $200 million to Metro Access Service. Mr. Wiedefeld has done many things since he came on board to try to find efficiencies within our budget. Most of those efficiencies, of course, once you do something to save money, it continues to pay dividends in the ensuing fiscal years. So even with what we're looking at in terms of the service proposal for FY21, we're still faced with an $8 million shortfall. So that's still one more thing that we'll have to find within the budget to get on top of that. In terms of the improvements that I mentioned, I think I mentioned some of these already, but it's the one I didn't mention actually is also on the Metro Rail, looking on Sundays to provide the same level of frequency of service that we currently provide on Saturdays. Similarly, for Metro Bus, there are a couple of routes where we want to improve the frequency on the weekend as well. And then, as mentioned, the proposed budget has a number of different fare proposals. So one of the proposals is to, and again, so this is, I don't want to complicate it too much, but our board approved the docket that went to the public. So that included basically anything that board members or the general manager had put forward that they decided to put out to the public is what is on the public docket right now. So that includes up to a 25% increase on the base fare, up to $1 increase on the max fare, and then also a weekend flat fare, which is a new proposal. The general manager proposed a $2 weekend flat fare. In the docket, it's up to $2.75, so anywhere from that $2 to $2.75 range is what's out there for public comment. Idea there being that, if you're a family and you're looking at driving downtown to spend the day downtown, or taking the whole family on Metro, sometimes the math works out that it's better to drive, and that's not our business. We want you to take Metro. So the idea there is that you would, at $2 flat fare, $4 a person, it's a much more reasonable consideration to use Metro on the weekend if you can pay a flat fare for that. As I mentioned earlier, the bus pass is proposed to go down from $15 to $12 to continue to encourage that. And then also some new passes, one 2-day weekend pass and one 3 and 3 day short trip passes also are being proposed for the budget. Again, a lot of focus trying to encourage customers to use passes on our system. So a little bit about where we are with the budget process. The proposal came out this past November, December. Our board considered it and basically figured out what they wanted to put out to the public. And then right now, we're in the middle of the compact public hearing process. We had the official compact hearings last week, and the public comment period is actually, as Mr. Goldman mentioned, is still ongoing. And then early April, we expect board approval of the final service and fare proposals. And then our fiscal year begins July 1, and any of the service and fare changes would happen usually right around July 1st. Often it's the last Sunday of June. So again, so as everyone mentioned, the comment period is still open. This tonight is obviously an opportunity for the public to come speak to the council members here who are here, to Mr. Goldman. And also we encourage you, we have an online survey from WMATA.com. You can take the survey, and even at the end of that survey, there's an opportunity to add your any comments that you have. Also online, there's a fare calculator, so you can put in your, the station you go to or your bus route and figure out what your fare would be under the various proposals that are out there. And again, we want to have your comments. They need to be submitted by 9 a.m. on March 9th. Yep.
Charlie, that's terrific. Thank you. Mr. Goldman, are you commenting at this point? You're done. Okay. I need to make a few other introductions. We have Councilmember Hans Remer, who's a member of the Transportation and Environment Committee, has joined us. Thank you, Hans. Councilmember Andrew Friedson, don't mean to step on your applause, is here as well. Craig Wilson from Councilmember Navarro's office is in the back. Thank you, Craig. And then we also have Joseph Eong from Congressman Raskin's office. And Joseph, thank you for being here. And I think Kathy Mitchell's here from your office as well, Hans, right? Okay. All right. We have, pardon me? Oh, and where's Partop was here? Partop Verma from, we're using your space here at the planning board. Thank you for hosting us here. We're very glad you could join us as well. Okay, so panelists, I want to invite you up. Charlie, thank you so much for that really helpful presentation.
Tom, I can call them up.
Please, you
by
have the
five.
list.
I do.
Take it over. Thank you.
All right, so for our first group of 5, I'd like to invite Jane Lyons, Derek Neighbors, Brad Stewart, Matt Losick, and Partap Verma to please come and take a seat in front of one of these mics. So we'll go in this order. Jane, we'll begin with you.
Good evening. My name is Jane Lyons, and I'm here on behalf of the Coalition for Smarter Growth, the leading organization in the DC region advocating for walkable, inclusive, transit-oriented communities. Our organization has worked on the executive committee of the Bus Transformation Project and will continue to support its recommendations. Improving bus service is essential to DC and the region, especially for low-income riders who may have no other way to get to jobs, training, education, and services. We see positive evidence of results from the Bus Transformation Project in the proposed budget. Partnering with Metro Now and our nonprofit partners, we will work to implement the important recommendations of the BTP, which will help our region to deliver faster, more reliable, more affordable bus service. We support a number of provisions in the proposed budget, but are deeply concerned about others. To start, we support WMATA's positive initiatives, such as free transfers for riders from bus to rail. This is a top priority for low-income bus riders, and we strongly support this measure as critical to creating a seamless transit system. Removing the transfer penalty will make more transit routes more efficient and feasible. Second, restoration of late-night service. This will help late-night workers as well as to promote nightlife in the region. Lower cost fare passes. We commend the board for reducing the cost of the 7-day regional bus pass from $15 to $12. Enhanced improved weekend service because not everybody has a Monday through Friday work schedule, and many riders use Metro for errands and recreation every day of the week. However, we oppose the following proposed fare changes, which will hurt low-income riders in particular. First, the 25-cent fee for riders that use cash to ride the bus, peak hour fares after midnight when service is not operating at peak, and the $1 extra surcharge for using Metro Extra. We need better bus service, not drastic cuts to our system. Maryland, D.C., and Virginia should work to remove the arbitrary 3% cost cap and launch a bus network redesign study with the goal of improving service and ridership throughout the region. This process can start with the development of common service standards for WMATA and local bus services based on the frequency and coverage needs of our region. Thank you for your consideration.
My name is Pratap Verma, and on behalf of the Montgomery County Planning Board and the Planning Department and Parks Department, I want to thank the T&E Committee, WMATA, Michael Goldman for organizing this forum to discuss the FY21 operating budget, particularly the cuts to the bus system. As someone who uses Z8 route on Route 29 for many years to get to downtown Silver Spring, this is really personal. There was no real way for me to get to DC as a 19-year-old because I didn't have a car. And these kind of experiences we do see all throughout the county, especially in our most vulnerable locations, Mid-County and East County, where a lot of immigrant families use the bus system to get to work. My own mom used 3 different bus routes to learn English in the 70s. And had she not had those opportunities, she wouldn't have been able to integrate herself in society. So these experiences are very common, and also the council also adopted the Veers Mill Corridor Plan, where, as you know, has one of the highest riderships in Maryland. And when we do planning in this department, we assume a certain level of ridership as part of our planning process. And for that to go down, that affects many different projects, and it also affects the way we plan, quite frankly. One of the things we've also done, and thanks to the leadership here in this room, we have adopted a racial and equity lens when we're reviewing our own planning process. And I think that's also important to recognize that our most vulnerable populations are using the bus system. And as part of our own planning process, we're constantly looking at that angle when we're looking at policy making. So thank you for considering our experiences, and we really hope that you are able to restore full bus service.
Good evening, council members and Mr. Goldman. My name is Brad Stewart, and I'm the Vice President and Provost of Montgomery College's Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus. But I'm here on behalf of all 15,000 credit students and 35,000 non-credit students at Montgomery College, about half of whom rely on public transportation to access the educational services at the college. I'm here tonight to make sure that nothing bad happens, if I can, to any of the budget cuts or any of the budgets for WMATA. About half of our students, as I mentioned, take the bus. A large number of our faculty and staff do as well. And this is crucial for Montgomery County because we are one of the economic drivers of the county. For example, we provide all kinds of healthcare professionals for the county, cybersecurity professionals for the county, biotechnology workers as well, and those folks need to be able to access our campuses, and they need a strong public transportation system to do that. This is not the time to disinvest in WMATA or any other public transportation system that serves our students. It is sort of cutting our nose off to spite our face if we do that. Thank you very much.
Yes, good evening. Thank you for having us. I'm Derek Neighbors, ATU Local 689 member, AA lead, heavy overhaul mechanic at WMATA Metro. I've been there 17 years. I'm also a 35-year member or resident of this very Silver Spring community. The reduction of bus routes is not the answer to resolve budget or vehicular traffic issues here in the DMV. The reduction of bus routes increased traffic and congestion, adding a minimum of 6 to 10 additional cars to the roadway per each bus eliminated or taken out of service. As a result, this will increase drive times, carbon emissions, and additional wear and tear on the roadway. The conditions of the road right out front, Georgia Avenue, horrible, as well as Fenton Street, Colesville Road, Piney Branch Road, they're less than ideal conditions. The reductions of bus routes makes no economical sense. This affects those who can least afford it. Those too young to drive, those without cars, seniors, and individuals with disabilities students, and those on a fixed income. By the way, the average cost of a vehicle and maintenance, gas, insurance, and parking is about $10,000 a year. Increased emissions from additional cars impact air and noise quality, greenhouse gases, health-wise, upper respiratory ailments on the increase and is considerably healthier for the environment and beneficial to walking to and from bus stops to increase physical health for individuals relying on the bus. Safety benefits. Transit buses reduce traffic and congestion, reduce vehicular accidents that add to the second worst traffic conditions in the nation. Our metro operators, and they're operators, and they're bus drivers, they're operators, go through extensive drivers and safety training, providing the DMV with the best ride in the nation. In conclusion, route reductions only divert the costs to consumers and impact the environment negatively. And mind you, the riding public takes the bus to get to the rail. They do not take the rail to get to the bus. And I thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk.
Good evening. My name is Matt Losak. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. We represent nearly 400,000 Montgomery County residents. I can tell you that when I moved to Montgomery County, I chose my apartment on the basis of its proximity to a bus stop. I used to take the bus every day to and from work, and I expect many of my neighbors who rent their homes do the same and are relying on bus service in order to do that. I want to point out that in the last 10 or 20 years, we've seen a substantial increase in the number of people who rent their homes in Montgomery County. In 2007, we were at about 23%. We're nearly 40% now. That population includes working families, and a disproportionate number of them are people of color who rely on mass transit and cannot afford private cars. And we must discourage the use of private cars, as you all have pointed out, and we're grateful for your doing so. There is a climate change crisis, and we're going to have to start changing our cultural behavior in terms of how we transport ourselves to and from work. I want to also say that we have seen a surge in people who are beginning to rely on mass transit, and it's exactly at this time because of your work, Councilmember Hucker, and your colleagues. When we asked for an investment in WMATA, when we asked to end the turnback, we set out an expectation that this service would be available, and increasingly so. We may see a shortfall in the budget, but now is not the time to reduce that investment when you're changing the cultural appetite for that mass transit. A shortfall now is an investment in a future where people are going to use this service more and more. I think Council Chairs Hucker's numbers about the increase in usage are extremely important to remember. That's a trajectory that is heading up. Renters count, renters have a voice, and renters are increasing in number every year in Montgomery County, and they are relying on mass transit. On behalf of all the renters of Montgomery County, and in agreement with my colleagues on this panel, please do not reduce the funding for this service. Increase it and find other efficiencies, including efficiencies that pull down funding from the state and federal funding as well, wherever possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask before you all exit, just to be fair to the general manager and to help inform Mr. Goldman. So if they were the federal government and they could just borrow and print more money, that would be one thing, but they can't.
They seem to have no problem taking it from the Defense Department.
So, right. So, I mean, to all of you, and maybe you, especially Mr. Neighbors, as somebody who's inside the system, sees it inside has an inside view for 17 years, and as a leader of the ATU 689, where do you want Metro to make cuts if it's not bus service?
Well, That's a tough question.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Right. I would think more so. I hate to say this, is maybe at the rail, on the rail side. The problem is when we have the buses running on a 12 to 14-year cycle, we bring them in midlife to rebuild them, to put them back out on the road. So right now we had 200 new buses waiting to go into service. So maybe you can delay the purchase of more buses.
Okay. Anybody else have looked into this, Jane?
As I said in my testimony, we strongly support looking at the 3% cost cap, as we saw from the presentation earlier. That's really what's restricting investment in the transportation that we need. Right now, in the Maryland House of Delegates, there's a bill that I believe just passed third reader from Delegate Corman that would help to remove this arbitrary cap. And I believe that there are similar efforts in Virginia. So I really think that that's the best way forward.
Terrific. Mr.
Chairman
Goldman?
Huckabee, just let me state that I can be a little more broad since this is not the formal hearing.
Right.
But this is not necessarily a zero-sum game. There's really three ways, broadly speaking, that this can be done. One is what Chairman Hucker suggested, is that we cut something else in the budget. But we could also raise some revenue in terms of fares or parking fees or something else, naming rights. Or the third choice is always to increase the amount of subsidy that the state of Maryland and jurisdictions in Virginia and the District of Columbia is going to pay. So those are all the options that we have to consider. We have to consider on the last one whether the jurisdictions are willing to increase subsidy at this point in light of the current 3% cap, which is in effect as required by both Virginia and Maryland legislation. So that's what we have to look at.
Can you comment on, I wanted to ask Mr. Scott before you escaped. The slides showed declining revenue, and you may have addressed this, but if ridership is up, what is the driver behind declining revenue?
So briefly, so the total proposal that you saw there, that factors in any of the fare changes as well. So that factors in and so we obviously reducing the bus pass.
Reducing the passes from 15 to 12.
Right, so that assumes, that looks at what ridership do we anticipate, and then also what are the fares that we anticipate from the general manager's proposed budget. So that's, what we come up with that. And it wasn't much of a decline, but you're right, it was
Despite increasing ridership and fare collection, you're actually proposing reduction in passes and other.
That's what we're anticipating.
Right, okay. Yes, please. Councilman Reamer.
Thank you. Charlie, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So the shortfall comes from a revenue strategy, essentially. You're trying to make changes in your revenue policy, but that has an impact on revenue generation as a result, and that's what's driving the...
Well, and another factor is also that we continue to see, even though rail has seen increases in ridership, we, along with many other transit systems across the country, we continue to see declines in bus. It's something that we're struggling with. Other systems are struggling with as well. Many different factors, playing into that. And we're all trying to figure it out, really. But we're again, we're doing many things to try to.
Could we go back and see the fare, the fare slide?
Is that the one?
That one, and then the one that outlines some of the various. So first of all, this one shows expenses are up 1.1% projected, but revenue is down 1.5% projected. Okay, and then could you go to the?
You want to see the fare proposal?
Yes, the fare proposal. So you have a variety. You increase the peak base fare, but what were some of those reductions? Can you highlight those again?
So again, it's the
7-day pass.
So a major one is actually eliminating the transfer discount. So
Transfer discount.
The transfer discount right now, from bus to rail or rail to bus, you got 50 cents off the second mode. We're proposing to increase that to $2. So this $2, right? So effectively, for for most of our bus fares are $2. So effectively, the bus trip would be free. So that's it makes it much more of a multimodal, seamless system that is part of the recommendations of the bus transformation project. Other advocates have sought that, but it obviously costs money. But we think that is something that has been advocated for and is worth, at least getting the public comment on that.
Besides advocacy, advocates asking for that, do you have focus groups or user surveys or anything else to tell you, allow you to predict what the ridership increase will be in eliminating that kind of subsidy?
For the ridership impact for
How'd
that
you come up with
specific.
that, and what data or other research do you have that would lead you to that conclusion that that's the best place to spend $1?
Well, again, it's something that we've heard from advocates for, I would say, Gary's here as well, here in Richmond County, I would say probably for decades. I've heard it, I've been in this either here or the state of Maryland for now 15 years, and it's something that I've heard the whole time I've been focused on this part of our transportation sector. Yes, it's the transfer discount. And it's been at 50 cents for many years, and back when rail fares were much lower, that 50 cents was somewhat more of a, meaningful part of your fare. Now that fares are higher, up to $6, I don't think that 50 cents is really.
But there's no user surveys or focus groups or anything that would lead you to.
So we have internally, our planning department has models that they can run where they can, put the inputs in for, this level of fare change all the way up to a full, free bus to rail, and they can try to predict what all these models are. You always feed your best data into the models, and then you do it, you figure out what happens, and then you put your new data into the model based on the actual outcomes.
So MCDOT sent a letter, and they expressed some concern about the fare discount. Now I understand a little better the nature of their concern, which is it would be great for WMATA bus riders who take a WMATA bus to the metro.
Yes.
But ride-on bus riders who take the ride-on to the metro would pay a full fare on ride-on. And so there would be inequities and irrationalities as to why one trip essentially is free on your way to the metro and another trip is not. So we're asking for you to, I guess the county's letter is asking for you to, partner with us a little bit.
To slow down.
Come up with a phased approach where maybe
right.
we could
So-
match you. Because we generally want to have the same fare policy as WMATA, so that's just an equity issue within the county.
That'll be up to Mr. Goldman and his colleagues to figure that out. Yes.
Okay, that's helpful. So, and then if you agreed with the county's letter and chose to phase that in, that would potentially provide fair revenue to not have some of the cuts in service potentially. Who knows? You'll see.
Many different levers you can pull on this budget.
I mean, I think we should try to also do the same thing. I think to the extent that it's a barrier for people, the cost of that round trip, we want people to use public transportation rather than drive, so, or simply just have a more affordable trip either way. I'd like to add one other point, in that oftentimes we look at systems, whether it be our education system or this transportation system, in terms of revenue and expenses within that system. But we look at our education program, Montgomery County Public Schools, as a tremendous investment for the county for our overall economic prosperity. The efficiency and reliability of the transportation system has a correlation to our overall prosperity, whether it's companies investing in Montgomery County or this region, workers coming here to work, people living here and investing in their communities. And so those expenses and the costs of not having an efficient service should also be part of the overall conversation when talking about state or federal funding. Is this an investment that pays off in other dividends that should also be calculated in this overall budget analysis?
Okay. Speaking of MC, Department of Transportation, I didn't introduce the Director, Chris Conklin is here, and Deputy Gary Ehrenreich is here as well. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Councilmember Glass has questions for us.
I'll make this quick because I do really want to hear from everybody who's here for the evening. But one question and one comment. Mr. Scott, regarding the enhanced fare options that we're seeing right here, it looks like most of the proposals, there's a lot of proposals to increase the fees and increase the charges, except there's one that stands out to me, and it's the lower 7-day pass, which is $15 to $12. My understanding that is basically a tourist type pass.
No.
Explain what that is.
This is the bread and butter of our bus system. These are our bus riders. So many of them choose to purchase the pass. We've lowered that from $17.50 to $15, and proposals to lower it further to further incentivize bus ridership and make it much more a lot easier to ride the bus, in the region.
Good clarifying question I asked then.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Last thing I have is really more of a comment, but WMATA, you referenced it. It's the bus transformation project, and I serve on the Transportation Planning Board, and we took that up last year, talking about it, and the Greater Washington Partnership, one of the larger regional business organizations, has said buses are our future. Because we do not have the money to build more heavy rail, metro. We do not have the money to build more light rail systems. And so it has to be a cost-efficient system that gets our people commuting throughout the region, and that is buses. And so riddle me this. I don't understand how we know we need to expand our bus network and strengthen that bus network. And here we are talking about $35 million in cuts to the entire DMV, which seems to me to undercut the point of the bus transformation project. And when the Transportation Planning Board wrote a letter in support of the transformation project, I inserted a paragraph, a sentence or two, quite frankly, that said, be mindful of the suburban jurisdictions, because what it seems like is WMATA wants to withdraw bus service from Fairfax, from Arlington, from Montgomery County, and from Prince George's County. And it seems to me that this proposed budget is proof of WMATA's interest in a long-term withdrawal, which means that we would then have to supplement with our own ride-on system. So that gives me pause and great concern. And I say that to you, you're nodding. I also address that to Mr. Goldman. So thank you.
Not sure if there's a response to the comment or not, but clearly what we want is for the jurisdictions to step up their subsidy so that we are not hitting the cap. The 3% cap was always, something that was of concern. It was part of the deal for the long-term capital funding, but it's prohibiting our ability to make fare changes, many of which I think we would like to make. Having a significantly discounted weekly pass for commuters, regular commuters, that sounds really beneficial. The weekend flat fare, your comment about a family trip, I can speak to experience. If I think it's going to be $3.50 or $4 or actually more, round trip, family of 5, you might as well drive, so we need to tackle that problem. But it sounds like we can't afford to make those fare reductions because we're bumping up against that cap. And so that is a problem. We need to be able to align that. And of course, we still want to align locally our ride-on fare with your fares, as our letter expressed. But, these things need to fit together. So we'll hopefully, when do you approve this budget? Do we know what will happen in Annapolis before this budget is finished?
So I think our board target date is April 2nd. Mr. Goldman can.
So we would.
Sometime during the month of April, yeah.
So we would not know the outcome in Annapolis.
Maybe read the tea leaves, but yeah.
Maybe the tea leaves? Okay. All right, well, we certainly have work to do, and I concur with the comment. I really am excited about the bus transformation initiative. I think it is a terrific vision, and we're going we're going to work to make sure that it improves bus service in Montgomery County. And part of that is going to be, we got to put our money where our mouth is. We need to invest in bus service. And it's disappointing to see reductions of service, but some of the fare proposals look interesting. So thanks.
Okay, Crystal. Thank you all so much.
For our next group of 5, we will call on David Helms, Ben Ross, Zoe Tashayev, Clay Tunis, and Peggy Edwards.
David.
I'm Dave Helms, representing Washington Area Bicyclists Association. We have 1,500 members in Montgomery County. Thank you. I'm one of them. I'm also a resident of Four Corners. Councilmember Hucker is my district council member. Thank you, sir. The residents of East Montgomery County are highly dependent on bus service. US 29 is the corridor that everybody gets down. Now, if you take the routes off that line, people aren't going to be able to get to work. These are working class people, many of which are below poverty. This is an equity issue. They need not less service. They need affordable and effective. And part of effective is where we're building up that culture of ridership. It can't be, well, here's some routes today, and here's some routes, and then they go away. That's not how you build up the culture. That's not how we get the adoption from the user. This is an investment that you have to make, and I encourage you and implore you to continue to make that investment on behalf of these citizens in East Montgomery County, half of which are African American, Asian, as well as Latino, Hispanic. This is the most diverse area in the county and really in the nation. So please make that investment for our citizens. Thank you.
When I saw the J2.
State your name and your affiliation, neighborhood, organization.
Oh, okay. Clay Tunis, no affiliation, but I'm from Hillendale.
Thank you.
When I saw J2 on there, it brought back memories because I used to ride the J4. Is it on?
It is on.
Testing. Okay. And anyway, I'd take the J4, and when I couldn't or I missed it, I'd take the J2. Another thing I liked to hear was about the culture of the kids, giving them free rides so they get used to riding the bus, and it's cool or whatever. I'm starting to see the effects of population shift and development in my neighborhood by the new reality of automobile gridlock. Folks are speeding through my neighborhood looking for a shortcut that really does not exist. And in the midst of all that, there are the stalwart folks walking down my street to the bus stop. Some I know own cars but choose to ride on public transportation. The others go to work to a job that does not pay enough wages to allow them an automobile, let alone insurance, registration, and maintenance. I'm speaking to both here and specifically those workers who will be working late night shifts somewhere in the White Oak Science Gateway. I remember reading about late night, early morning workers at the National Harbor Casino et al., where they had to run to get the last bus home, which I think is sad. Not just running to catch the next bus, but the last bus, with no other transportation options available to them. I used to ride Metro a lot. Now I drive an electric car and feel great that I don't have a tailpipe, but it's still another car on the road. Getting folks out of their cars and into buses is something we can work on before, during, and after the Science Gateway construction and the new Hogan's Heroes toll lanes. We can keep getting folks to leave their cars behind and hop a bus. Cutting bus routes is one of those reasons folks stop riding the bus. even those who have a choice. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ben Ross, Chair of the Maryland Transit Opportunities Coalition. Thank you for having this event. I'd like to make a few points without repeating too much of what's been said before. First, I'd like to really emphasize one of the more, I'd say, insidious parts of this bus cut system, which is cutting back the last couple of runs on different routes. You know, it sounds like you're not losing much because there aren't that many riders on the last bus, but you're destroying the whole route when you do that. You will, because people won't rely on the last bus, because if they are a little late and they miss it, there's nothing. So when you cut the last bus, you're losing ridership from the buses before it. And it really is essential to build ridership that a bus run from early in the morning until late at night with a reasonable frequency. And we already have problems in the Metro bus network in this county. The C8 is a particular problem because it stops, it runs, for those who don't know in the audience, it runs from White Flint to College Park, and the last bus from White Flint is before most of the restaurant shift workers end their job, and the last, students, of course, stay up late in College Park, and the last bus going that way doesn't serve them. And let's not repeat that problem on more routes. Now, the really most important point is what's driving this is that 3% cap. And that 3% cap was fundamentally due to a political situation in Virginia that doesn't exist anymore. So let's get on it. And, Tom, you used to be in a position where you could do something directly about it. But let's talk to our legislators and really make sure that that thing goes away, at least in Maryland, and we can get something done. Now, since you asked the last panel for suggestions of where to find savings, I have a particular one which is in the control of the county, which is retiming traffic lights. The traffic lights are timed to move the maximum number of vehicles so that a bus with 60 people in it counts the same as a car with one person in it. And especially at the entrances and exits of the metro stations, you have a bus with 60 people in it waiting, paying the bus driver's salary, and slowing down the riders while they're watching cars go by. And there's real money, and it's partly just a matter of paying attention. There's one intersection near the Bethesda Metro that was switched from a 120-second cycle to a 60-second cycle, and I calculated that the bus operating cost savings from that between ride-on and Metrobus just at that one intersection was $25,000 a year, plus the more attractiveness to riders. Then next time the traffic lights were retimed after some construction, it went back to 120 seconds. And I think it's just no one paying attention. And there is money around the county, and it's one of the greatest thing about moving a bus faster is that you make the service better by spending less money. And so that is the ideal solution wherever you can get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Zoe.
Hello. Good evening, council members and Mr. Goldman. My name is Zoe, and I'm here on behalf of the Action Committee for Transit. Zoe Chev. I am a senior at Clarksburg High School, and I took the bus here today because I do not own a car, like a lot of students in Montgomery County and DC Public Schools. And I took the J2, actually. So a lot of us rely on public transportation. For us, buses aren't so much as a convenience as they are a necessity to get to school, to get to jobs, to get to internships. So I'm immensely disappointed by the proposed cuts in service that this budget provides. I'm especially disappointed by the seemingly spurious logic that drives these cuts and a unfortunate neglect of the needs of our younger and disadvantaged populations that rely on public transportation. Because people rely on buses to get around, right? I take buses everywhere. I'm especially disappointed by the cuts of the Q, which currently serves from Shady Grove to Wheaton, and with the proposed cuts would no longer serve important stops like Montgomery College, Rockville, that a lot of students in Wheaton and Silver Spring rely on to get to, and same with Carver Educational Services Center. A lot of kids in the Wheaton downtown area are engaged in advocacy, and a systematic cut of the Q routes would severely blockade those students from achieving that advocacy. We just recently, as Councilmember Glass pointed out, expanded the Kids Ride Free program. So youth ridership is...
With large thanks to you.
Well, I'm not the council member here. But so youth ridership is something very important to me. And 65,000 people in Montgomery County rely on buses, and a huge portion of that is students. And according to the WMATA themselves, I think we've had a 51% increase in youth ridership on Metro buses. So clearly ridership is expanding in certain aspects, and for us to start cutting buses just as we're making moves to expand ridership to new populations, it seems counterintuitive, and it's very frustrating for me to watch. I'm going to be leaving Montgomery County pretty soon to get to college, but I would like to believe that when I left it as a better place than when I came here. And seeing buses cut that would severely impact students' transportation and mobility abilities is very frustrating to me. I'm also, lastly, one of my biggest concerns is the increase in the 25% fee for charging for using cash to get on the bus. It seems almost illogical, right? I mean, if we're penalizing people for using cash to get on the bus, I just turned 18, so I have never used a debit card before, so oftentimes I'd walk into a store and try to pay with cash, and I'd get mean glares from the cashiers. So I understand that taking cash takes a lot longer, but I also know that taking change is also a lot longer. So imagining a time to dig into my pocket for a quarter just so I can get on the bus is it's a little illogical there, so I would severely urge against implementing that. But I'll finish off with some positives. Action Committee for Transit obviously very much supports the free bus to rail transfers. Anything that encourages ridership and makes things easier for people is a great idea. And the flat fare on weekends. We have flat fares on our buses. It makes sense to carry this over to our heavy rails. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Very powerful. Peggy?
Hello, I'm Peggy Edwards. I live in Tacoma Park, and I am a member of a group called POSNA that stands for Parents of Special Needs Adults. My son is 27. He relies on the J2 to get to and from work. He just moved back to the Silver Spring area because the ride-on buses up in the Montgomery area, or the Rockville area, stop running late at night. And the news of the Metro bus limiting late night service on the J2 in particular will be a big problem for him since he works at ArcLight Movie Theater. And the shifts usually go to 11 or 12, and he can still catch a bus at 12:30 to get back to Silver Spring, and then he can either walk to Tacoma Park, or if he has enough money on his debit card, he can take an Uber. But, you know, taking an Uber all the way back from the mall, that's like 2 hours of his shift, and he gets, I won't get into all that, usually 1 or 2 shifts a week. But my son's not the only one impacted by this type of service. I'd also like to speak up about senior citizens, for example, who live up in the Olney-Ashton area. When my parents moved down to this area in 1990, my mother didn't drive, so she would come to visit us in Tacoma Park on the Z2. And at first it was great. Then they cut out that middle of the day run, so she had to either come early in the morning and stay till the end of the day or not come at all, or get my dad to drive, which was never a good idea. Anyway, at some point, that middle of the day gap really impacted my mother, but I think it really impacted many more people than my mother. The people who work in the community she was in, it was Friends community, Friends House community, the nurses and the people who come, it was fine for them on a Monday through Friday because their schedules go till 6 or 7 in the morning and then they switch in the evening. So that worked, but they don't have service on the weekend. They don't have the middle of the day service. So the daytime caregivers couldn't get to Friend's house to work with the senior citizens. So, you know, I'm thinking about seniors, I'm thinking about people with disabilities who will never be able to drive a car, and I wouldn't want my son to drive a car, actually. I'm hoping that some of these adjustments could possibly wait, at least on the J2, until the purple line is set up. I mean, it seems silly to cancel J2 runs when there will be adjustments once the purple line comes. And also, I always wonder about just running smaller buses, because, you know, when I meet my son at the transit center, sometimes he's the only one getting off the bus at midnight. And it's like, why have that long bus? Can't we have short buses for some of those late night runs? And I don't know. That's sort of my idea. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for your testimony. Remember, we got to be out of here at 8:30, so we got to keep this rolling.
All right, for our next group of 5, Daniel Willem, Marquise Younger, Daniel Millsman, Eric Cathcart, and Amy Ginsberg. Since that's only 4, let me see if I can invite, where's Dave? Oh, can I do one of these names? Okay.
Yeah.
Nia Banks.
Great. Dan?
For the record, I'm Dan Wilhelm. I'm president of Greater Colesville Citizens Association. We're a 3,500 household community bordering kind of around Randolph and New Hampshire Avenue. We've been a big supporters of improved public transportation, and particularly in the eastern part of the county, but the whole county, for at least a decade. Part of the reasons you've heard tonight, there's a lot of low-income people in our area. There's a lot of seniors who rely on this. It's important for the environment. Anyway, as part of the transit solution, part of the transit solution is improved bus rapid transit, with US 29 corridor being the first of 3 in our part of the county. BRT, also known as Flash, is only part of the solution. The other part is local bus, which includes both ride-on and Metrobus. The local bus routes need to be restructured to take people from home, work, retail, and activity centers to Flash stations. Routes need to be expanded to more locations and also operate more frequently. A lot of our routes only operate during rush periods, so it makes a challenge. For the WMATA Z routes, this means the routes would be terminated into the Flash stations rather than running all the way down the US 29 to the Silver Spring Metro. Rather than eliminate these routes, changes are needed. For the Z2, this would stop at the White Oak station and then continue on up New Hampshire Avenue to Olney. The Z6 would stop at the Tech Road station and, as proposed on the line, continue up the east side of 29, which is some changes, which is a good way to go. The Z8, again, would stop at the Tech Road Station, and this would continue on the west side of 29 up Old Columbia Pike and be extended all the way up to Burtonsville BRT station. The Metro bus vehicles need to be scheduled to arrive at the flash stations just before the flash vehicle arrives and not leave until after the flash vehicles arrive. The flash vehicles are going to ride every 7.5 minutes, so that shouldn't be that big of a scheduling thing. And this is particularly at the White Oak Station and the Tech Road Station. One of the ways to save some money would be to share bus stations, bus stops, like in Hillendale. Right now we got a ride-on stop, and then about 100 feet away we got a Metro bus stop. And why not have one bus stop shelter that satisfies both? And they're also, the way it is, it messes up traffic on New Hampshire Avenue. But anyway, that's all my comments.
Great, terrific. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Amy Ginsberg, and I'm the Executive Director of Friends of White Flint. And Friends of White Flint is a nonprofit composed of property owners, businesses, and residents, all working together to transform the White Flint Pike District area into a walkable, transit-oriented neighborhood. Bus service is really important, but it's not the only topic of interest. And so we urge you to build the northern White Flint Metro Station entrance. It's vital to the economic health of the Pike District in Montgomery County. WMATA studies have shown that this new metro entrance will increase ridership at the station by 50% over the next 25 years. A new northern entrance will spur much-needed redevelopment, especially along Executive Boulevard and Montrose Parkway. It will make Montgomery County and the Pike District more attractive to small businesses and large businesses, residents, visitors, employees, since walkability and access to transit are the keys to economic competitiveness. A new station entrance will also increase the walk shed, making Metro more accessible and safer to reach for thousands of people living in half a dozen multifamily residences, helping to fulfill Vision Zero goals. Not having the second Metro entrance is hindering economic development. For example, AMP by Strathmore patrons have said they don't use Metro to attend shows because the walk along Rockville Pike to the White Flint Metro Station is dark and unsafe. Also, 2 potential tenants to the new office building at Pike and Rose chose not to lease space because the current Metro entrance is too far from the building. We also believe that WMATA's $36 million cost estimate for a northern entrance is higher than required. A more modest entrance would be less expensive and better suited to the area. We don't need a full-blown station. We just need an attractive, easy access to the Metro at Old Georgetown Road and Rockville Pike. On behalf of the more than 2,000 residents and small and large businesses and property owners who are members of Friends of White Flint, we ask you to build that second entrance to spur commercial and redevelopment.
Great, thank you. Eric.
Good evening. I'm Eric Cathcart. I'm president of the North Hills of Sligo Creek Civic Association. It's a new gig for me, guys. It's very, very cool to see you guys in this setting. This is nutty. This is just nutty that we're having these conversations. It's nutty that we're cutting bus service. From WMATA, we're cutting bus service from Montgomery County too. It just doesn't make a lick of sense. I represent 355 homes that are inside the Beltway, and we are in this donut hole of an area that we're losing. We're literally being thrown underneath the bus here because, no, there's no bus, right? There's no bus. The BRT stops, last stop is in Four Corners. We're expected to go north to go south. We're supposed to go north up to Four Corners, catch the BRT to go south when the BRT goes right by our houses. That's just plumb crazy. You guys, there's a disconnect here. I'm not seeing the county and WMATA talking to each other, and we're definitely, as residents, we're definitely not in the loop at all. I've got binders of stories of people that they're scheduled around these buses. Their whole lives are scheduled to the second around these buses. any kind of change is just going to turn their lives completely upside down. I just want to express my frustration with both the county and WMATA for not having us at the table, the residents, and not understanding our true stories. So I'm going to pass it on. Thanks.
Yes. Good evening. My name is Danny Millsman. I am not affiliated with any organization here tonight. I'm just here.
Oh, thank you. Like I said, my name is Danny Millsman. I'm not here on behalf of any organization. I'm a Maryland resident, and I'm sure that all of you are aware that just today or yesterday, it was reported today, the DC Council, a new bill was introduced by Charles Allen of Ward 6, Metro for DC, the amendment, to support a multi-tiered plan that will be implemented in steps to make to give $100 in credit for Metro every month to DC residents. This was supported by 9 of his colleagues on the council, and I think this is a very good first step, but I'm here tonight to advocate, and as others before me have urged, restore the bus service, which I urge you to support too. I know you do. I'm urging WMATA in general to do that, but I am also tonight here asking you to consider eliminating fares completely. This might sound like a radical idea, but actually, I'm just trying to remember what other city did it. I have it written right here. Kansas City, Missouri did this, and people said, well, you know, this is going to cost a lot. You know, we're not going to make any money. We're not going to make any money from that. And the city estimated it would cost between $8 and $9 million in revenue. They only did it for their buses, but that it could increase the region's GDP by 13 or 14 million. So I think the idea here is that these fares are a tax on marginalized community. Okay, somebody coming from Bethesda doesn't, you know, for the most part, doesn't really have to care about how much they pay for the metro. But somebody coming from a place working 2 or 3 jobs, really, that every time they go on the metro, that costs them a lot. That adds up. And what I would like to say is, if you want to encourage ridership, there's no better way to do it than to make metro free for everyone. And while we're on the topic of increasing ridership, I know that it's very important to you. I remember Mr. Glass and I believe Mr. Hucker said that addressing climate change is very important to you. It's very important to me. It's very important to my generation. I think adding electric buses is great. I think it would be a mistake to add them without first considering where the actual energy from adding them comes from, and for making sure that the materials they're used to build them are ethically sourced, especially the lithium for the batteries, and it's not being, you know, taken from unethical sources. I'll wrap up because I know I want you to be able to talk, but the question, where is the money going to come from? I believe petitioning to raise the subsidy on the premise that this will have positive effects on the local economy and will raise the standard of living. You know, the revenue from fares is only $700 million, which is dwarfed by the subsidies that Metro gets, you know, in the budget from the government already. So my next statement is just that the Metro should serve the people and fund their lives, not the other way around. And roads are built and maintained by taxes, and they're free to use, and they're maintained by taxes. And you look at the money Metro already gets from local and federal grants, that's taxpayer money. And Metro is already funded by the public, so it should be available to the public and the entire public, not just those that can afford it.
Right. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Nia Banks on behalf of Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 689. First off, I wanted to speak briefly about what the gentleman said about the fares and the bus to rail transfer and ride on maybe not being able to facilitate that. Just a little bit on that. The WMATA was actually designed specifically for the reason of simplifying the fare system so that people would have an economic means of transportation and they wouldn't have to make a million transfers and pay a bunch of different fares to get from one place to the other. And so with that, I would like to start by reading an excerpt, a small excerpt from the Urban Mass Transportation Act of 1964. Section 2A, the Congress finds that the predominant part of the nation's population is located in its rapidly expanding metropolitan and other urban areas, which generally cross the boundary lines of local jurisdictions and often extend into 2 or more states. 2, that the welfare and vitality of urban areas, the satisfactory movement of people and goods within such areas, and the effectiveness of housing, urban renewal, highway, and other federally aided programs are being jeopardized by the deterioration or inadequate provision of urban transportation facilities and services. The intensification of traffic congestion and the lack of coordinated transportation and other development planning on a comprehensive and continuing basis. And 3, that the federal financial assistance for the development of efficient and coordinated mass transportation systems is essential to the solution of these urban problems. So I would like to start off first by thanking the Montgomery County Council for affording Montgomery County residents an opportunity to be included on the record for public comment. Public transportation is not intended to turn a profit. Rather, it exists to enhance the lives and economy in our region. WMATA should be ashamed of themselves for putting the funding issues of the system on the backs of the riding public, the working poor, the elderly, the disabled, and the school students who attend extracurricular activities after school and depend on the Metro bus to get home safely. The purpose of Metro bus is to provide an affordable, regional, accessible transit system. Passengers do ride and should be able to ride in between the train stations, and low ridership is not a good enough reason to cut a line or a segment of a line that gets employees, consumers, the elderly, and the disabled, along with parents and small children alike, a one-seat ride from one jurisdiction to the other. The D5 was created by the authority as a promise that the passengers on the Maryland side of Chevy Chase would have a one-seat ride to downtown after the Friendship Heights station was built. And here we are again attempting to break that covenant. All of the Montgomery County routes that are proposed to cut or modify are packed full each and every day to offer rail service as an alternative is a smack in the face of the riding public who have come to depend on the door-to-door bus service that Metro Bus provides. While the ridership may be low on the late-night service, those few passengers are oftentimes the service workers who close the restaurants and nightclubs we patronize to have fun. So shouldn't they be entitled to a ride home after a long evening's work? Not everyone wants to ride the train, and not everyone can afford a car as a primary means of transportation. What about the disabled passengers who are unable to drive? How do they get around? The Y and Z lines are packed full each and every day, so you would add further strain on the already congested main thoroughfares in Montgomery County. Also, the Y lines service Leisure World, a retirement community, and oftentimes seniors board the Y buses to make doctor's appointments at Montgomery General Hospital. Metro bus service takes thousands of cars off the road each day, while I rub more salt in the wound of the commuters in our region. And finally, I urge you to, instead of cutting service and stranding your passengers, go back to the jurisdictions, Maryland and Virginia, and ask them to remove the 3% growth cap. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Crystal? Do we have anybody else? How many more? Oh, really? Okay, I have an outdated list. How can comment on?
Mark, do you know if we have a hard out at 8:30? Okay, so I guess we can keep going.
Okay.
Okay, all right. So
It's up to Board Member Goldman.
Okay. All right, our next group, Carlene Ponder, Jerry Garson, Luell Hayes, Larry Lynn, and Bill Okins. It doesn't matter. You can just sit it. All right, Julie Anderson. I'm sorry? Yes, Bill Orleans, yes. Julie Anderson? I have Anderson, but it says Anderson on the paper.
My name is
Jerry, please
My
begin.
name is Jerry Garson, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Montgomery County Civic Federation, Inc., which represents over 150,000 Montgomery County residents. The mission of the Montgomery County Civic Federation is to preserve and improve the quality of life for all current and future residents of Montgomery County. Montgomery County Civic Federation, Inc. is opposed to the proposed elimination by WMATA of bus service on the Z2, Z8, and Z9 bus lines. We are opposed to all the other reductions proposed in Montgomery County. Elimination of the Z2 bus will eliminate all service on New Hampshire Avenue north of Randolph Road. WMATA should be providing free bus service on all bus lines in the Washington region. Only 16% of the total operating and capital expenditures are covered by fares. The cost of free bus service in Montgomery County would probably be less than $8 million per year. The cost of free ride-on bus service in Montgomery County is anywhere from $20 to $23 million. The district has proposed that it be the next U.S. city to make transit free under a proposal by D.C. council member that would give each resident $100 a month to use on public transportation. Free transit would remove one of the top obstacles to jobs for many low-income residents, and it would keep the region affordable and accessible to families of color who are being priced out. It would also be better to make all bus and WMATA rail service free in the Washington area. If free, you can raise parking fees to have some of the revenue. You also cut out the need for some of the police enforcement, for fare evasion, and for monitoring things. You save a lot of money on capital costs because you don't have to fix the fare entrances and everything else. So there's a big savings. If you want to build the White Flint station, all you do is need a ramp. You don't need any station agents or anything. And by making the fare free, we could get rid of a lot of the station agents who have them be basically operating as service representatives.
Thanks.
I thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Jerry. Jerry, go ahead.
My name is Larry Lynn. I'm up by Briggs Cheney Road and Old Columbia Pike, a swath of land of 4 miles from Tech Road to Burtonsville. There's going to be carpet bomb with service cuts. And there's going to be some collateral damage. I didn't expect to be here tonight. This is the last place until I heard on the news today, the media does its job. Oh, there's going to be a hearing at the county point. What? Call 311. What's going on? Because last week, I was showing friends on the Z8 bus that I ride first thing in the morning, the old Metro thing, where the meetings are going to be for these Z cuts in Boston, New Carrollton, Gallery Place. Not exactly, it sounds like an end run. It smells like an end run. Oh, might even be an end run. You make the call. Anyway, I'm a 9-year resident of Silver Spring, and like I said, I ride the Z bus all the time. That's the first one I get on every day. If it wasn't for a ride on a Z bus, I wouldn't get where I'm going. I have a photocopy here. Actually, I have 10 photocopies. Anybody wants them on the dais, they're free. They got sent to Metro this afternoon. And I see some of you council members are here. You're going to get a first look at, because I was going to visit you for 3 weeks, give these folks a chance to reply. Due process, due diligence. Oh, which reminds me, we're having a hearing here tonight, which is great, but a better idea would be a Silver Spring hearing for all the Z stuff, with the advisories attached, affixed to the bus stop signs like they've been for the advising of the service cuts with BRT. Hooray for BRT. I can't wait for bus rapid transit. But it would be nice to have on the buses, because I didn't know about this hearing tonight. To the life of me, if I didn't listen to radio today, I wouldn't know.